Good evening. My name is Patty Shreve from Hopewell United Methodist Church, and I'm here to tell you a little bit about our prayer quilt ministry, Prayers and Squares. Prayers and Squares began in 1992 at Hope. See the connection there? Hope United Methodist Church in San Diego, California. The idea behind these prayer quilts is simple. A heavy thread is used to take stitches through the quilt layers, and the ends are left free to be tied with the square knot. As each knot is tied, a silent prayer is offered for someone in need, someone who has asked us to pray for them. What makes each quilt unique is not the pattern, color, or workmanship, but the fact that prayer is symbolically tied into each one. These comforters are a statement of faith and a testimony to our belief in God and in the power of prayer. It is something tangible. Hopewell was charted as a Prayers and Squares chapter in May of last year. Since that time, a total of 89 quilts have been presented. Just to let you know, 21 of those were baby quilts for Puerto Rico following Hurricane Maria that were personally delivered last December. For our football enthusiasts, if laid end to end, the presented quilts would stretch the entire length of a football field with 12 yards left over. Whether you're talking football or fabric, that's a lot of yardage. Average value per quilt is $18.37, but priceless in the support it provides the recipient as well as their family and caregivers. Now, you may not think that your church could support a quilt ministry, but I'm here to tell you that you probably can. Some 17 months ago, Flo Douglas, the Hopewell member who brought us the prayer quilt ministry, tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Can you sew a straight stitch?" My reply was yes. Her second question was, "Have you ever quilted?" My response was yes, 30 plus years ago, and I swore I'd never make another one, and yet here we are today. We have a core group of ladies that not everyone knows how to sew. We have some ladies who just apply the ties, another one writes the thank you notes for donations, some just cut the fabric while others design the quilt. You see where I'm going with this? We have another member who does the follow-up. We make contact at 6 weeks and again in 3 months to check on the recipients. You don't have to know how to sew to be an integral part of this ministry. Our motto is, it's not about the squares, it's about the prayers. This little ministry has far exceeded our wildest expectations. I could never find the words to adequately describe just what it has done for our members, our church, and the recipients. So I thought I'd let them tell you in their own words. Here's a few excerpts from the many cards and letters we've received. Quote, "I felt the need to feel prayers, and so I slept with it softly over me, and the next morning I felt relieved about being in a new place. Now when I need the magic blanket, I cuddle up next to it and sleep peacefully." End quote. Quote, "The prayer quilt graces the foot of my bed, and she'll be a comfort in times of distress." End quote. Quote, "Thank you so much for the beautiful, meaningful quilt. It will be going to Atlanta with me on Wednesday, where she was to start chemotherapy." And this about a quilt that was mailed to Australia. Quote, "When I opened the package and read your letter, I couldn't stop crying. It meant so much to me to know that my beautiful friends from Milledgeville, Georgia, and their friends from Hopewell felt so much of me to take the time and effort to make such a beautiful quilt. I think we may start a prayer quilt group here. The most beautiful gift I had ever received." End quote. And the last one, quote, "I shall cherish it forever." End quote. In closing, I'd like to share just a few stories. We had one gentleman who had become so attached to his quilt that when he was in the driveway on the way to the hospital, his last trip ever as it turned out, he would not leave until the driver put the car in park and went back into the house and retrieved his prayer quilt. We had a school teacher that had been presented with the quilt, and she said that she wrapped it around her and felt she was wrapping herself in prayers. The principal of the school announced on the loudspeaker that anyone who had not tied a knot in this quilt to come to the office and do so. One recipient attended a Sunday service following his quilt presentation to personally thank Hopewell. Over lunch, he indicated that when he'd received the diagnosis of cancer over 2 years ago, he didn't cry and hadn't cried since then, as he just wasn't a crier until when he was presented his prayer quilt He cried like a baby. I can't tell you how many times, well, I could if time allowed, how God has worked in mysterious ways through this ministry. Thank you for allowing me to share with you this evening our prayer quilt ministry story.